Alright, this is kind of a shout out for story time with Uncle Bill. I will I'll link his link in the comments. Um, he brought something up. He lives in Florida. It's a cool channel. You ought to check him out. He's a good guy. It just he appreciates things, and the things he appreciates might be so small, but if you actually appreciate things too, you'll really enjoy his channel. But he just did a video tonight, and it was about body surfing. And he met a guy who was like 73 and a veteran, and he kind of talks about that. I met a guy one time. Hurricane Irma hit the Florida Keys, and somebody I know had a house down there, and he's in his 80s, and he's, I don't know, 87 years old now. Great guy, very righteous, good guy. But in any event, his house got totally fucked up, and couldn't find a contractor to fix it. Meanwhile, he lives in New Jersey. Uh, when I was a kid, if you drove up my driveway, at the top of the driveway there's a field, drove through the field, drove through the woods, went over the top of the hill, started going down the hill, you'd hit their house. So, kind of grew up with these guys. And, later in life, they were a little bit older. Later in life, got to know him really well, became very good friends. And I got a phone call, hey, my old man's planning on going down to Florida to fix his house. You want to go down there and fix it? Because he's, I think he was like 82 at the time. He's going to go down there and die. So I went down there and fixed his house. It was in a little Torch Key. So I roll in there in that red truck that's in my icon, whatever the thing is that next to my name, and to prove to somebody that I made it that far with that truck, I took that picture. That's actually in Little Torch Key, Florida, in the Keys. But I rolled in there. It was probably 11 or 12 o'clock at night, and there's a white Jeep, kind of like cruising the area. When I pulled into the freaking house, this little white Jeep pulls in right behind me. And the guy comes out and he's like, who the fuck are you? What are you doing? He pulls a fucking gun, sticks it, we're standing like 6 feet away from each other. I'm pretty usually much armed. So I pull a gun, I stick it at his chest. I'm like, who the fuck are you? What are you giving me a hard time for? I'm supposed to be here. And, we're just like kind of yelling at each other. And I'm like, so I reach my pocket. He's like, don't reach your pockets. Do this, do that. And I'm like, I'm calling the owner, Tibor Sipos. I probably shouldn't have said that. But he's like, I know, Tibor, you're not supposed to be here. So I call the guy. Like I said, it's the middle of the night. He finally answers the phone. And he's like, hey, Tibor, I got a fucking problem. You want to talk to this guy? So he talks to him and they talk it out. And they're like, okay, he's supposed to be here. And all of a sudden he drops his gun, so I drop mine, and we don't kill each other, and it's all good. And he's like, people are looting everything. People are showing up and they're just looting everything. And the people that are here, his house, he didn't have any windows left in the house. He was basically living in it was like a lean-to after the storm hit. And his house was completely made out of concrete. The house I was working on was made out of wood, but it was made to vent so that when, hurricanes went over, the tidal surge would go through and knock out the first floor. But the first floor is basically a garage and an apartment. The second floor was where you're going to live, and that was like 12 feet above the water. So that was actually in one piece. And his house just got totally fucking destroyed. He wasn't even living off grid. It was a goddamn disaster. but people were coming down, and from Miami or from who knows where, and any house that had anything standing, they were just coming through and robbing it. And then jewelry boxes, TVs, anything that wasn't soaked in water, they were stealing it and heading up to Florida. So he and a handful of others that had stayed there were preventing the looting in their neighborhood. It was kind of like a high octane neighborhood watch, and that's why he kind of stopped me and put a gun in my face. But when the owner of the house explained who it was and what was going on, it was all good. And over the coming days, weeks, I was there for, I don't know, 6-7 weeks putting the house back together. We became friends. We'd have coffee and shit in the morning, and we started talking, and I said, "How'd you end up down here? Down in the Keys?" He was a union laborer, and things shut down in the fall, so he had nothing better to do but collect unemployment. So we went down there, and they were building the new bridge. The original bridge was the original railroad bridge that went to Key West from Miami, and it was falling apart. So somewhere along the line, the government decided they needed a new bridge. I don't know if it was Florida or the federal government. I don't know who it was, but they built the new bridges connecting all the islands down to Key West. And he got a job on that, and he was in his late 20s, and that's he drove down to Florida, hearing that there was big work, and he helped build the bridges. So if you drive across, this guy Don, he was the one who helped build all those bridges. They started in Miami, and he just worked for whatever 7 or 10 years until they were all completed down to Key West. But in talking to him, he told me that he was drafted, and he wound up in the 173 Airborne Division, and he told me the years. It was like 62 to 65 or something like that. Late 65. And I asked him if he was in was he there for the battle on November 8th. And I know my history, and I know all the major battles, but the band Big and Rich actually did a song, and that's why that one popped to mind. And the guy just, he just welled up with tears, and he's like, "Yeah, your history." And it's one of those things, it's like, the politicians, somebody made the decision, we're going to drop guys out in the middle of fucking nowhere to get ambushed, and then we know where the enemy is, and then we can, bring in airstrikes, we can bring in whatever, and those guys are sacrificial. And that was in 1965. Do you think any of us are any different now? In 1965, 120 guys are going to get dropped in the goddamn woods in the middle of fucking nowhere with nothing to support them. And when, 1,200 come and attack them, then it's like, okay, well, we can bring in, air support, and we can bring in artillery and some destroyers off the coast and whatever the fuck we got available. But those guys, that 120, are disposable. Do you really think anything's changed? We're still all disposable. And that guy Don, who built, served his time. He, they called him. He went. He did his thing. And you saw, half of everybody that he fucking everybody in his unit. Half of them all died, and that was okay. And then he went on to build the bridges that connect, Florida to Key West. And now he's, last time I talked to him, he was still doing fine. He was a contractor and just kind of doing his own thing down there. But, he built fences and lake landscaping and shit. But do you think anybody in the military right now is any better than that? We know the enemy's there someplace, so we'll just put in some bait. And those bait are American citizens, American youth, the future of America, and they don't fucking care. And the way Joe Biden's going, you listen to Putin, you listen to Biden, you see what's happening. Why wouldn't Russia start lobbing nukes? And it's people like me and you and everybody else that's going to get fucking fried. And why do they care? Because we're going to nuke them, and theoretically, when it's all said and done, we're going to do better, and they won't exist anymore. Well, I won't. You won't. Nobody else will. The people running the fucking show, they'll do okay. I'm assuming they'll do okay, because long before those fucking buttons are pushed, they're going to be someplace safe. That's who's running the country right now. People that don't give a shit about us. People that are willing to just send soldiers in to die. That's who's running the country. Do we need a change? Maybe. Do we have any kind of self-preservation mechanism left? Or is it just, buy on Amazon, buy on credit, buy on whatever, and whatever happens, it's all good because we're living the fucking life right up till the end? I don't know. But I would prefer to see my children and my grandchildren have at least the life that I had. And with the people in charge, I don't see it happening. So, that's my story for tonight. Hope everybody thinks about it. And, you'll have a good night.